Hello, my internet friends. Um, Today, uh, it's the beginning of May, 2023, and I would like to talk to you about why I am rejecting the communist parties. Um, well, for one thing, I don't like that the ones in Russia are rallying for nuclear warfare. Um, Particularly, they're talking about targeting cities where civilians live. They're talking about targeting places where people like you and I live. Um, they're homophobic, even the ones here in America, with queer people who join them. That's one of the main things. Um, yeah, I will explain these in details. Um, so, I am indeed leftist. I'm not liberal. I am progressive. I am a socialist. But the communist parties, I don't really see them as left wing. Um, what they do is they take the rhetoric and then they twist it and they find excuses to support murderers. Almost 10 years ago, I became left. I came out of the closet as a queer person. And I started to see the right for what it was, and I found interesting articles um, from the perspectives of people who were not white, or people who were queer, or of other nationalities, other abilities, and disabilities. Um, and I also had my own struggles being a working class person, coming of age during a recession and trying to find a job. And um, everything started to flip. Um, but then I saw this country elected Trump. And I I got very frustrated with everyone else, very angry, and I I met up with Marxist Leninist and asked for some explanations to why they support or why they are in favor of regimes that resemble feudalism. And the explanation was that parties like that, single party states, have this method of keeping international capitalists out, protecting them from exploitation. And it sounded like a reasonable explanation, so I talked myself into it. So I joined the study group, and to be a communist, you have to join with your principles. You're pro democracy, pro equality, pro inclusiveness, all those good things. And then you have to talk yourself into supporting these rather autocratic, fascistic ideas to protect it. And it can go very far. I mean, we all know about Joseph Stalin. We know what he did. And all the communists know it too. They talk themselves into justifying it. They don't admit these things. They act like fascists. They act like neo-Nazis, like Holocaust deniers. And they all know this, but they just say it's not happening, or it doesn't happen. That China isn't committing genocide. They don't say that part out loud. It's a cult. In these groups, we got to talking about Putin, and we know Putin, he's not a communist, but he is in opposition to the West, and he goes for the very legitimate criticisms of Western imperialism. But here is a guy offering something to the communist. Offering to keep the Western capitalists from exploiting his country, and he's appealing to the far right and the far left in that way. But it's for his own gain, his own imperialist agenda. He wants to expand the Russian Empire. He considers, Kremlin propaganda considers communism as a Western experiment on Russia. And they consider the 90s rise of neoliberalism as an experiment on Russia. And it certainly does look like that. The neoliberalism was an experiment, more or less. And the Russian people have been too weak to resist experiments. But the thing is that the Russians actually did want communism. Although the communists did betray the people. Russia almost became a democracy in 1918. But he is taking advantage of people's frustrations. He's largely blaming us for something that we didn't really do. And that's kind of easy to do when people are frustrated and looking for someone to blame. And Putin continues to do that. Putin continues to spout bullshit. He calls us Anglo-Saxons, as if we are still what he is, actually, pillagers. As if my criticism of him makes me what my ancestors were, although if you look into it, anyone of English descent is much more Celtic than Anglo-Saxon. The Anglo-Saxon race has been absorbed. never really existed, and it doesn't exist. The Anglo-Saxon is just a language. I know that my ancestors were religious extremists who left England and colonized the Americas. I know that I've inherited privilege from colonizers, from exploiters, from pillagers. I know this. But that's not me. I'm not my skin color. I have every right. And the communists told me that I don't have this right. The communists told me that it is not my place to criticize the anti-imperialist movements of other countries, but rather to weaken my own country's imperialist ambitions. Our support for Ukraine is much more about our self-preservation, much more about justice against a murderer, Putin. It's much more about us handling our own internal politics without outside interference than it is about getting at Russia's wheat and Russia's oil. Anyone who's queer should recognize that. I know queer history in my own country. It's not like us Anglo-Saxons were always two men adopting a Russian baby. It's in 1969, if a gay person was murdered by a homophobe, the police wouldn't even investigate, like what Russia is now. And if people in Russia study LGBT history, they will see something, they will see a potential in the queer community to overthrow dictators and improve democracy in their country. If you study the Stonewall riots, you'll understand. You'll understand that the rainbow flag is not the hanky code. It is about protecting your rights, or your right not to be abused by the police. And Putin doesn't want the Russians to know that, because the rainbow flag is a threat to him. But the communists don't understand that. The communists don't understand that there is more potential for liberation in the queer community than there is from an anti-American with nukes. Gay Russians are better allies for the left than that fucking murderer who should be put in prison immediately. Communist parties in the West, they have no place in a revolution. If you choose If you choose fascist dictators over Russia's LGBT, you're not a leftist. And that's why I don't support you. And if you say that I have no place criticizing that, that's disrespectful, and I'm not interested in being your accomplice. I'm not interested in joining your cult. And I will make that known. You're a young person who's frustrated with capitalism and oppression in America. Get on board. Get involved in politics. Get involved in your community and volunteer. But and go ahead and read leftist material. Go ahead and read the Communist Manifesto. Go ahead and read Stalin and Lenin and Mao. But don't join a tanky party. Don't join a cult. They will just exploit you just to tear apart this country and to compromise our security. But they will not help you.